All right, everyone, it's essentially time to call the GOP race because we've got another new poll. It's another Suffolk poll, countermanding the old one from the other day, Boston Globe Suffolk, showing Trump at 55 now in New Hampshire. He's already in the low 50s as far as the aggregate, and the problem is that there are no longer enough undecided voters to, I think, nudge Nikki Haley upwards enough in coordination with attempting to target last-minute voters who are undeclared and who will take a GOP ballot for her. And the reason why is because I expect that some Dem-leaning or independent voters will, with TDS, by the way, and the anti-Trump voters, will actually take a ballot and vote for Trump in the GOP primary. And the reason why is because they've been convinced by the legacy media that Trump is less electable, especially with reports like, oh, Nikki Haley beats Biden by 5-7 points in a matchup. It's the Kasich effect. I've already explained that before, but a lot of the lower info voters, they're not going to comprehend that. It's going to go over their heads. People didn't even understand what I was talking about when I brought up the Kasich effect back in 2016. The concept is that as a candidate is less well known, the people that hear their message, a lot of them are going to climb aboard, especially if they don't like the other candidates. And so basically like Kasich v. Hillary Clinton, where he did prevail in more polls than any other candidate there. Of course, he was running ahead of Trump, Cruz, or Rubio at the time. The reason is because basically, if you don't know anything about him, it's generic Republican v. Hillary Clinton. And so you get an advantage from that. As candidates become more well-known, typically they become less well-liked, and things regress back to that median sort of situation where it's like a 50-50 sum game. You've got partisan voters, you've got the hardcore fans, you've got the soft support, and then you've got people who simply vote for a candidate because they dislike who the other is. In the general, the Kasich effect, of course, does not matter. Donald Trump has effectively won the nomination. He's gotten a bounce from Iowa. He's gotten a string of important endorsements. He's 35 points ahead of Nikki Haley in her own home state of South Carolina. DeSantis has abandoned New Hampshire. Now he's beginning to abandon ad buys in all states. He's beginning to abandon interviews. He might drop very soon. In fact, he might drop before South Carolina. I know that he said that he's pivoting there. He's probably going to see the writing on the wall if a few points of his voters defect to Trump, as I suspect again will happen as well. Trump wins New Hampshire. Nikki Haley comes in a reasonable second, probably in the low 40s or thereabouts. He wins by 10 points or, the high single-digit mark. She has a path forward, at least in the minds of her supporters. The problem is they seem to be entirely clustered in New Hampshire. Well, then where's the opposition? Now, there are only two other candidates in the race. One of them is abandoning basically everything and throwing his hands up. He's run out of money almost, Ron DeSantis has. And the other candidate is a one-trick pony who spent $100 million in ads on one state, a small state, a relatively rural state, a state that's easy to canvass. And if you check out the difference between Nikki Haley's little town hall events at bars and restaurants, with Chris Sununu looking like a spanked puppy in tow, he's her Morky dog, versus Donald Trump, who just pulled in his Manchester rally, arguably 10,000 attendees, and a significant amount in Nashua the other day as well. It couldn't be, and Concord, by the way, it couldn't be more night and day. Donald Trump is taking a last-minute barnstorm in New Hampshire. Nikki Haley continues her small-town, I'm the cafe mom approach, but it hasn't really gotten her anywhere. And it juxtaposes, by the way, really hilariously with Nikki Haley, the big donor candidate. Again, she was trying to point this out the other day, unsuccessfully with Chris Sununu there. I posted that clip on my last live stream on Friday. Nikki Haley looked unhinged in the context. She's trying to explain, of course, no, most of my donors donate less than $100. It was pointed out the proportion of donations, though, is wildly disparate. It tilts heavily off into multi-millionaire land, and she was attempting to explain that. And of course, Chris Sununu was like, what the fuck is going on? Is the best reaction since Tim Scott flummoxed Tucker Carlson by prowling around on stage when he was supposed to sit down and have a conversation. It looked more like a campaign pitch. It was also uncharacteristic for him, actually. He tended to be the likable candidate, by the way, just endorsing Trump. You've got three major endorsements. You've got Ramaswamy. You've got Doug Burgum. I realize that he never had a huge amount of weight in the field, a point or two, basically. but he had a fairly hardened core of support, sort of like a Ramaswamy, because he was the one who clearly up on the debate stage was being deliberately ignored and badgered by the moderators in the one debate he actually qualified for, or two debates rather, I think, and so the endorsement matters. And then Tim Scott, of course, in South Carolina, that definitely matters. South Carolina is now beyond Nikki Haley's capabilities. Also, Trump, in general election polling, is riding up towards the mid-60s. Arguably, he's already there. There's no longer any room for any other candidate. They should drop out after New Hampshire, endorse Donald Trump, wrap up the primaries. Super Tuesday will be fun just to see the differential because nobody else will be running, and so you'll get a gauge on how many TDS Republicans there are in some states with closed primaries, and that's a wrap. That's basically the end of the game. Nevada and South Carolina are basically going uncontested. DeSantis can do the bravado thing and say, well, clearly I'm too far behind in New Hampshire, but in South Carolina, I think we can make it. I would love to see a situation where, much like with Iowa, DeSantis, as one last, backhand to Nikki Haley, manages to scrape up a second-place win there. I want him to stay in through South Carolina and bombard the state with barnstorming on the order that he did in Iowa. Go to every little forgotten community in South Carolina, gobble up all those rural votes, and just edge her out. Because then she gets extra humiliated coming in third in her own home state. Again, DeSantis fans, I swore after Iowa that if DeSantis came in second and edged out Haley, and he did, I would not criticize his campaign or his followers, and I hold to that. I'm rooting for you again to take second place. DeSantis can't win, but he can humiliate Nikki Haley, and that's really what matters. Nikki Haley's so uniquely unlikable that that's what every sane person in the country is hoping for, regardless of their political affiliations, by the way. Trump is going to run the field. Based on the post-Iowa polling, the bump that he's gotten, even if he hadn't gotten a bump in Iowa, I would still favor him to win. It's just it would be fairly narrow, and Haley would crow about how this is a two-person race. Yeah, a two-person race to nowhere. Basically, Donald Trump is riding in a Lambo, and you're on a speed pedelec. I don't think that you're going to win. And Ron DeSantis, meanwhile, is on foot at this point in New Hampshire. That's why he decided to abandon the state. I'm just hoping that in South Carolina, Nikki Haley gets egg on her face. But this race is fundamentally over. I predicted months ago that he would be the nominee. It was fairly clear. It was always clear that he had the advantage. And at the beginning, there was the outside chance that Ron DeSantis would manage to pull off an upset because he was riding in the mid-30s there for a while. He was only narrow double digits behind Trump in the aggregate. Haley never accomplished that. She stalled out everywhere across the board, and she's still falling in national polling. DeSantis was the only alternative that ever had viability on a national scale. He managed to mess up several times, and that declined his support. It just didn't work. And it was a packed field, and so despite his qualifications, and he does have some, it never really materialized. I still think that he got in too late or shouldn't have gotten in, although had Ron DeSantis not gotten in, Nikki Haley might have won Iowa. Because there wouldn't be any other mainline candidate competing for that sort of I'm the only one running against Trump slot. She actually probably would have risen up earlier because nobody else on the stage could really debate other than Ramaswamy, and they were busy attacking one another like pit wolves. So it was pretty funny. It was a good primary, everyone. It lasted about a goddamn week. I think that Trump 24 is definitely on the menu. That's about all. Peace out.